The blade of my snowplow scraped against the asphalt at 4 in the morning, sending sparks into the pre-dawn darkness as I cleared my third client's driveway in the upscale neighborhood of Maple Ridge, Minnesota. I had been running my snowplow business for 6 winters now, and this particular February morning in 2025 was shaping up to be one of the most profitable of the season. 12 inches had fallen overnight, and my phone hadn't stopped buzzing with requests from desperate homeowners willing to pay premium rates for immediate service. I was just finishing up Mrs. Patterson's circular driveway when headlights cut through the swirling snow behind me. A silver Lexus SUV pulled up, blocking my exit route. The door opened, and out stepped a woman in a designer puffy coat that probably cost more than my monthly truck payment. Even in the dim light, I could see the severe bob haircut and the pinched expression that screamed trouble. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice sharp enough to cut through the rumble of my idling plow truck. "Are you Derek Johnson?" I climbed down from the cab, already exhausted and not in the mood for whatever this was. "That's me. Can I help you?" "I'm Patricia Henderson, president of the Willow Creek Estates Homeowners Association." She pulled her coat tighter, as if the very act of talking to me was beneath her. "Your business operates within our community boundaries, doesn't it?" I frowned, trying to place what she was talking about. "I live in Willow Creek, if that's what you mean. I have a house on Birch Lane." "Why?" "Then you're well aware that all business operations conducted by residents within HOA boundaries fall under our jurisdiction." She pulled out her phone, scrolling through something with gloved fingers. "According to our bylaws, any commercial enterprise that services properties within the community must register with the HOA and follow our guidelines." "Guidelines," I repeated, feeling my patience wearing thin. "Look, lady, I run a snowplow service. I clear driveways." "There's nothing in my HOA contract about that." Patricia's lips pressed into a thin line. "Section 17, subsection C clearly states that any business vehicle operating within community streets must be approved by the board. Furthermore, we require all service providers to submit their route schedules to ensure equitable distribution of services." I stared at her, certain I had misheard. "You want me to share my customer list and my routes with you?" "It's only fair," she said, as if this was the most reasonable thing in the world. "We have residents who haven't been able to secure your services, and they're complaining. If you're going to operate in Willow Creek, you need to prioritize our community members first." The absurdity of the demand hit me like a wall of snow. I have contracts with my clients. I can't just rearrange my schedule because some people in the HOA didn't plan ahead. Most of my customers book me in October before the first snowfall. Then you'll need to make accommodations. Patricia's tone turned icy. "I'm calling an emergency board meeting for tomorrow evening. You'll attend and present your route schedule, or we'll be forced to take action." "What kind of action?" I asked, already knowing I wasn't going to like the answer. "We have the authority to fine residents who violate our bylaws. It starts at $500 per violation, and since you've been operating without approval for how long?" 6 years. She smiled, and it wasn't pleasant. "That could add up quickly." I felt my jaw clench. "You're seriously threatening to fine me for running a legitimate business. I'm enforcing our community standards. 7 p.m. tomorrow at the community center. Don't be late." She turned on her designer boots and marched back to her Lexus, leaving me standing in the falling snow. Mrs. Patterson had come out onto her porch during the exchange. "Is everything all right, Derek?" "Yeah," I lied, watching Patricia's taillights disappear. "Just HOA nonsense." But as I climbed back into my truck and headed to my next job, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was going to become a much bigger problem than I'd anticipated. The next evening, I showed up at the Willow Creek Community Center with a folder full of documentation. My business license, my insurance certificates, my LLC paperwork. Everything was legitimate and above board. I'd even called my lawyer buddy Marcus, who'd assured me that Patricia was blowing hot air. The HOA had no legal authority over how I ran my business, especially since I was servicing properties outside of Willow Creek as well. The community center was one of those modern buildings with too much glass and not enough character. Inside, the meeting room was set up with a long table at the front where 5 board members sat like judges at a tribunal. Patricia was in the center, flanked by 4 other middle-aged residents I recognized, but didn't know well. About 15 other homeowners sat in the audience chairs, most of them looking as confused as I felt about being there. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Johnson," Patricia began, her voice dripping with false politeness. "We're here tonight to discuss your commercial snow removal operation and how it impacts our community." I took a seat in the front row, my folder on my lap. "Before we start, I want to clarify something. I've reviewed my HOA agreement, and there's nothing in there about registering a business or submitting route schedules." A man to Patricia's right, whose nameplate read Robert Chen, leaned forward. "The bylaws were amended last November. All residents were sent notification via email." "I never got any email," I said, pulling out my phone, "and I check my email daily." Patricia waved her hand dismissively. "That's not our problem. Ignorance of the rules doesn't excuse you from following them. Now let's see your route schedule." I stayed seated. "With all due respect, I'm not sharing my client list or my routes. That's proprietary business information. My customers have privacy rights, and I have competitive advantages I'm not giving up." The room went silent. Patricia's face flushed red. "Excuse me, you heard me. I run a legal business. I have contracts with clients who pay me for a service. What I do outside of my own property is none of the HOA's business." Another board member, a woman named Sandra Kim, spoke up. "But you're using our streets. The wear and tear from your heavy truck, the early morning noise, it affects all of us." "I pay property taxes like everyone else," I countered. "Those streets are public, maintained by the city. And as for noise, I start work at 4 a.m., which is within the legal allowance for commercial vehicles in this county." Patricia stood up, her chair scraping loudly. "Mr. Johnson, you're being deliberately difficult. Several residents have complained that they can't get snow removal services because you're always too busy. If you just coordinate with us, we could ensure everyone gets fair treatment." "Fair treatment," I repeated, feeling my temper rise. "I'm running a business, not a charity. If people want to hire me, they need to call and book like everyone else. I'm not discriminating against anyone in Willow Creek. Half my clients live in this community." "But not the ones we've designated as priority," Patricia said, and there it was. The real issue, priority. I stood up now, facing her directly. "You mean your friends, the people on the board? Let me guess, you want me to bump paying customers so I can service your driveways first, probably at a discount?" "That's not what we're saying at all," Robert interjected, but his expression told me I'd hit the nail on the head. "You know what?" I said, making a decision right there. "I'm not playing this game. I'm not sharing my routes, I'm not coordinating with the HOA, and I'm certainly not prioritizing people based on some list you put together. If you want to fine me, go ahead. I'll see you in court." I walked out of that meeting with my head high, but my stomach was in knots. I knew I was in the right, legally and morally, but dealing with an HOA was like fighting a hydra. Cut off one head, 2 more grew back. The fine notice came 3 days later. $500 for operating an unapproved commercial enterprise within community boundaries. I called Marcus immediately. "They can't do this," he said after I read him the notice. "You're not operating within community boundaries in any way that falls under their jurisdiction. You're driving on public streets and servicing private properties. Appeal it immediately." I wrote up the appeal that night, citing every regulation and law that proved the HOA was overstepping. I submitted it the next morning, feeling confident that common sense would prevail. I should have known better. The next snowstorm hit 4 days later, another 8 inches of heavy, wet snow. My phone started ringing at midnight, but when I checked the caller IDs, I noticed something odd. None of my usual Willow Creek clients were calling. Instead, I was getting requests from neighborhoods I'd never worked in before. At 3 a.m., I headed out to start my routes. My first stop was supposed to be the Hendersons' house, ironically enough. Patricia's husband had booked me back in October, part of my premium service contract that included priority response within 6 hours of snowfall. When I turned onto their street, I found it blocked by an HOA security vehicle. The guard, a young guy named Tyler who I'd chatted with a few times, looked uncomfortable as I rolled down my window. "Sorry, Derek," he said. "I've got orders not to let you through." "Orders from who?" I demanded, though I already knew. "Mrs. Henderson. She said you're not authorized to provide services in Willow Creek anymore." "I have a contract with her husband," I said, pulling it up on my phone. "Paid in full through March. I'm legally obligated to fulfill this contract." Tyler shrugged helplessly. "I'm just doing what I'm told, man. You'll have to take it up with the board." I sat there for a moment, engine idling, weighing my options. I could push through. Technically, these weren't city streets, they were private community roads. But getting into a physical altercation with a security guard wasn't going to help my case. "Fine," I said finally. "Tell Patricia she's in breach of contract. She'll be hearing from my lawyer." I backed out and headed to my next client, Mrs. Patterson. Same situation. The guard had a list of properties I wasn't allowed to access, and it included every single one of my Willow Creek clients. This was war. I spent the next 6 hours servicing every single one of my clients outside of Willow Creek. The irony wasn't lost on me that by blocking me from my scheduled route, the HOA had actually made me more efficient. I finished my contracted work by noon, 3 hours earlier than usual. My phone had been buzzing constantly. Text messages from my Willow Creek clients, confused about why I hadn't shown up. Angry calls from people whose driveways were still buried, and one particularly nasty voicemail from Patricia herself. "Mr. Johnson, this is unacceptable. You have a responsibility to this community. If you don't fulfill your contracts, we'll add breach of service to your violations." I called Marcus before returning any other messages. "They did what?" he sputtered after I explained. "They can't prevent you from accessing properties where you have legitimate contracts. That's interference with business operations. Derek, this is actually good for us. They've just handed us a lawsuit on a silver platter." "I don't want a lawsuit," I said, exhausted. "I just want to do my job." "Then we go on the offensive. Let me draft a cease and desist letter. Meanwhile, document everything. Every blocked access, every client complaint, every interaction with the HOA. We're building a case whether you want one or not." I spent the rest of the day returning calls. I explained the situation to my Willow Creek clients, apologized profusely, and offered to refund their contracts. Most were understanding, a few were furious, but all of them directed their anger at the right target. The HOA. Mr. Henderson, Patricia's husband, called me that evening. "Derek, I'm so sorry about this. I had no idea Patricia was going to pull this stunt. I've been trying to reason with her, but she's convinced you need to be taught a lesson about cooperation." "A lesson," I repeated, "by preventing me from fulfilling legal contracts. She thinks if she makes it difficult enough, you'll cave and agree to her terms." He sighed heavily. "For what it's worth, I'm resigning from the community. This is ridiculous and I want no part of it." That conversation stuck with me. Patricia wasn't just being unreasonable. She was on a crusade. And people like that didn't stop until they either won or were forced to stop. The cease and desist letter went out the next morning. Marcus made it clear that the HOA's actions constituted illegal interference with contractual obligations, and that further obstruction would result in immediate legal action, including claims for damages. Patricia's response came within hours, not to me, but to the entire Willow Creek community via the HOA email list. "Dear residents, it has come to our attention that Derek Johnson, a resident and commercial operator within our community, has refused to comply with reasonable requests for coordination and equity in service provision. Despite our attempts at reasonable accommodation, Mr. Johnson has chosen confrontation over cooperation. The board has voted to increase his violation fines to $1,500 per incident and to restrict his access to community streets until such time as he complies with our bylaws. We encourage all residents to seek alternative service providers who are willing to work within our community framework." I read the email 3 times, each time getting angrier. She was painting me as the villain, the unreasonable one, when all I wanted was to run my business without interference. The comments on the community Facebook page were split. Some people defended me, pointing out that the HOA was overreaching. Others sided with Patricia, claiming I was being selfish and should prioritize community members. Then Mrs. Patterson posted a long, detailed account of what had happened from her perspective. She included screenshots of her contract with me, proof of payment, and a description of being denied service because the HOA had blocked access. She ended with, "This isn't about fairness or community. This is about control. The HOA has no right to interfere with private business contracts, and we should all be concerned about what they might try to control next." Her post went viral within the community. Suddenly, people who had been neutral or mildly supportive of the HOA started questioning the board's actions. More residents came forward with their own stories of HOA overreach, complaints that had been ignored, and fines that seemed arbitrary. The next board meeting, scheduled for the following week, had over 100 people signed up to attend. But Patricia wasn't done. She filed a complaint with the city, claiming my plow truck was operating without proper commercial permits. This was easily disproven. I had every permit required, but it meant I had to take time away from work to appear at a city council hearing. The hearing was a joke. The city administrator, a no-nonsense woman named Carol Jenkins, reviewed my paperwork, confirmed everything was in order, and dismissed the complaint in under 10 minutes. "Mrs. Henderson," Carol said, her tone sharp, "filing frivolous complaints wastes city resources. If you have a dispute with Mr. Johnson, it's a civil matter, not a municipal one. Don't bring this to my office again." Patricia's face turned purple, but she left without another word. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. The next snowfall came on a Saturday night. 8 inches of light, fluffy snow that would have been easy work. I had a full schedule, all clients outside of Willow Creek now, since I couldn't access my former clients in the community without risking arrest for trespassing, which Patricia had threatened. I started my route at 3 a.m., working systematically through the wealthy neighborhoods of Eden Prairie, Minnetonka, and Edna. The money was good, actually better than what I'd been making before. These clients paid premium rates and tipped well. Around 7 a.m. my phone rang. It was Marcus, and he sounded worried. "Derek, where are you right now? Just finishing up a job in Edna." "Why? You need to get home." "The HOA has filed an emergency injunction claiming you're in violation of multiple bylaws and that your continued business operations pose a threat to community safety." "What? That's insane." "I know, but they got a sympathetic judge to grant a temporary order. You're not supposed to operate your business at all until the hearing on Tuesday." I felt my world tilt. "Marcus, if I can't work, I can't pay my bills. My entire income is this truck. I'm already drafting an emergency appeal, but for now you need to comply. Park the truck and sit tight." I finished the job I was on and headed home, my mind racing. This was beyond harassment now. This was an attempt to destroy my livelihood. When I pulled onto Birch Lane, I found news crews parked outside my house. Apparently, someone had tipped off the local media about the HOA war happening in Willow Creek. A reporter I recognized from the evening news approached me as I climbed out of my truck. "Mr. Johnson, Jennifer Walsh, Channel 5 News. Can you comment on the injunction filed against your business?" I was about to say no comment, but then I changed my mind. Patricia wanted to play dirty. Fine. Two could play that game. "The Willow Creek Estates HOA is trying to shut down my legal, licensed, and fully insured business because I refuse to share my client list and give preferential treatment to board members," I said directly to the camera. "They've blocked me from fulfilling existing contracts, filed false complaints with the city, and now they've obtained an injunction based on completely fabricated safety concerns. This isn't about rules or community welfare. This is about control and retaliation." The interview ran on the evening news and was picked up by other local stations. By Monday morning, it had gone regional, with news outlets across Minnesota covering the story. The narrative was clear: small business owner being bullied by overreaching HOA. Patricia tried to do damage control, agreeing to her own interview where she painted herself as a concerned community leader trying to ensure fairness. But her explanation about requiring route schedules and registration sounded as absurd to viewers as it had to me, especially when the reporter pressed her on the legality of blocking someone from fulfilling existing contracts. The court hearing on Tuesday was packed, not just with lawyers and interested parties, but with media, community members, and even some state representatives who had taken an interest in HOA reform. The judge, a stern older man named Thomas Kowalski, reviewed the injunction request carefully. Patricia's lawyer, an expensive suit named Gregory Marsh, argued that my business operations created undue noise, road damage, and inequitable service distribution that harmed community cohesion. Marcus countered with documentation of every legal permit I held, testimony from satisfied clients, noise level measurements that proved I was well within legal limits, and evidence of the HOA's interference with existing contracts. Then he played his trump card. "Your Honor, I'd like to submit evidence that suggests the real motivation behind the HOA's actions." He presented emails, obtained through discovery, between Patricia and other board members. In them, they discussed how they could force me to provide free or discounted services to board members by threatening my business. They talked about teaching me a lesson for not being a team player. One email from Patricia explicitly stated, "If we make it painful enough, he'll either comply or leave, and either way we win." Judge Kowalski's expression darkened as he read through the emails. "Mrs. Henderson, are you present?" Patricia stood, her lawyer beside her. "Yes, Your Honor." "Did you write these emails?" Your Honor, those were taken out of context. We were simply discussing community welfare. Really? The judge held up a printed page. Because this one says, and I quote, "We need to make an example of Johnson. If we let one resident think they can operate independently, others will follow. That doesn't sound like community welfare to me. That sounds like intimidation." The courtroom went silent. Judge Kowalski continued, "I'm not only denying this injunction, I'm sanctioning the Willow Creek Estates HOA for abuse of process. You filed this emergency order knowing it was baseless, and you did so to harm Mr. Johnson's business in retaliation for him exercising his legal rights. That's not acceptable in my courtroom." Patricia's lawyer tried to object, but the judge cut him off. "Furthermore, I'm ordering the HOA to cease and desist all interference with Mr. Johnson's business operations, including but not limited to blocking access to properties where he has legitimate contracts. If I hear about any further harassment, I'll hold the board members in contempt." "Do I make myself clear?" "Yes, Your Honor," Gregory Marsh said quietly. "I walked out of that courtroom feeling vindicated, but the war wasn't over. Patricia wasn't the type to give up just because a judge told her to. I was right." Over the next week, I resumed my normal routes, including my Willow Creek clients. The security guards had been instructed to let me pass, though they looked nervous every time I came through. My clients were thrilled to have me back. Several had tried other snow removal services during the ban and found them lacking. Mrs. Patterson even baked me cookies as a thank you for standing up to the tyrants, as she put it. But I noticed strange things starting to happen. My truck was keyed one night while parked in my driveway. Nothing provable, but the timing was suspicious. Then I received a notice that my business insurance was being canceled. When I called the company, they claimed they'd received multiple complaints about my operations and deemed me too high risk. Marcus helped me find a new insurer, but it cost twice as much. Anonymous complaints were filed with the state licensing board, each one requiring me to submit documentation and waste time defending myself. Every complaint was dismissed, but the harassment was clear. I started keeping a detailed log of everything, including photos, timestamps, and witness statements. I had a feeling I was going to need it. The breaking point came in early March. Spring was starting to show itself, and the snow removal season was winding down. I just finished what I thought would be one of my last big jobs when I came home to find my garage door smashed in. The police came immediately. Officer Mike Daniels, a patrol cop I'd known casually for years, took my statement while his partner examined the damage. "Looks like someone took a sledgehammer to it," Mike said. "Any idea who'd do this?" "I've got a pretty good idea," I said, and explained the entire situation with the HOA. Mike's partner, a younger officer named Sarah Chen, looked up from her examination. "Wait, you're the guy from the news." "The Snowplow thing, that's me." "My mom lives in Willow Creek," Sarah said. "She's been talking about this for weeks. Said the HOA president has been on a warpath." Mike frowned. "You think Patricia Henderson did this?" "I think someone associated with the HOA did it." "I don't have proof, but the timing's pretty convenient. They took photos and filed a report, but I knew without evidence nothing would come of it. Still, I had security cameras that I'd installed a week earlier, anticipating something like this. I reviewed the footage that night. At 2 a.m., a figure in dark clothes and a ski mask approached my garage. They looked around nervously, then pulled out a sledgehammer and started swinging. The whole thing took less than 5 minutes, but as the person turned to leave, they passed under my porch light at just the right angle. The build, the gait, the expensive boots, even under the dark clothes, all pointed to someone I recognized. It wasn't Patricia. It was Robert Chen, the board treasurer, I called Mike immediately and sent him the footage. He came back over along with Detective James Morrison from the Property Crimes Unit. "That's definitely him," Morrison said after watching the video 3 times. "I know Robert. This is really stupid on his part. Can you arrest him?" I asked. "With this video, absolutely. We'll pick him up tomorrow morning." Robert Chen was arrested at his office the next day. The story made the news again, this time with a more serious tone. HOA board member arrested for vandalism in ongoing dispute. Robert initially denied everything, but faced with the video evidence, he broke. And what he said opened up a whole new can of worms. According to Robert's statement, which Marcus obtained through discovery for the civil case we were now definitely filing, Patricia had orchestrated a campaign of harassment against me. The insurance cancellation. She'd created fake complaint letters using different names. The keying. She'd done that herself one night after a board meeting. The anonymous licensing complaints, all her. Robert's involvement had been limited to the garage door, which he did after Patricia convinced him that I was planning to sue the HOA for millions and that they needed to pressure me into dropping it. She told me it was for the good of the community, Robert's statement read. She said if we didn't stop him, he'd bankrupt all of us with legal fees. The investigation expanded. Detective Morrison and his team interviewed other board members. Sandra Kim admitted to being pressured by Patricia, but claimed she hadn't participated in any harassment. The other 2 board members, whose names I learned were Thomas Wright and Helen Patel, had apparently been kept in the dark about most of it. Patricia herself lawyered up immediately and refused to talk to anyone, but the damage was done. The HOA board held an emergency meeting and voted to remove Patricia as president. She was also removed from the board entirely, along with Robert Chen, who resigned as part of a plea deal that kept him out of jail but required restitution and community service. The criminal charges expanded when the police uncovered evidence that Patricia had also filed a false police report claiming I'd threatened her. Something I'd never even heard about until the investigation revealed it. Making false statements to law enforcement was a crime, and now Patricia was facing charges beyond just conspiracy to harass. The trial was set for June. In the meantime, Marcus filed our civil lawsuit against both Patricia personally and the HOA as an organization. We were seeking damages for lost business, increased insurance costs, property damage, and emotional distress. The HOA's insurance company immediately moved to settle. They offered $50,000, which Marcus negotiated up to $75,000 plus a formal apology, and a guarantee that all previous fines would be rescinded and expunged from HOA records. Patricia's personal liability was a separate matter. She'd been acting in her capacity as HOA president, but the criminal actions, the vandalism conspiracy, the false police report, those were on her. Her trial in June was swift. The evidence was overwhelming. Video footage, text messages, witness testimony from Robert Chen, and records of all the false complaints she'd filed. Her defense tried to paint her as an overzealous volunteer who'd made mistakes in judgment, but the jury wasn't buying it. Patricia Henderson was convicted of conspiracy to commit vandalism, filing a false police report, and harassment. The judge sentenced her to 18 months in jail, suspended after 6 months with good behavior, 3 years probation, a $10,000 fine, and 500 hours of community service. She was also ordered to pay restitution for my garage door and legal fees. The criminal defense lawyer argued for a lighter sentence, claiming Patricia was a first-time offender who'd been under stress. But Judge Kowalski, who'd presided over the original injunction hearing, and seemed to have taken a personal interest in the case. Wasn't sympathetic. Mrs. Henderson, you used your position of authority to wage a campaign of harassment against a man whose only crime was refusing to be bullied, he said during sentencing. You filed false complaints, conspired to damage property, and wasted considerable public resources with your frivolous actions. This court takes such abuse of power seriously. Perhaps time behind bars will teach you the lesson you tried to teach Mr. Johnson, that actions have consequences. I attended the sentencing, along with several other Willow Creek residents including Mrs. Patterson, Mr. Henderson, who divorced Patricia shortly after her arrest, and even some of the board members who'd been caught up in her schemes. Watching Patricia be led away in handcuffs should have felt like victory, but mostly I just felt tired. The civil settlement money came through in July. $75,000 minus Marcus's fees and various costs left me with about $50,000 clear. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to repair my garage door properly, replace my keyed paint job, and put some money away for the slow season. More importantly, the HOA had undergone a complete transformation. New elections were held, and the incoming board president was Mrs. Patterson, who'd run on a platform of transparency and limited interference. One of her first acts was to repeal the bylaws that Patricia had pushed through about business registration and route sharing. The new board also implemented strict oversight rules to prevent future abuse of power. Board members were now subject to recall votes if 20% of homeowners petitioned for one. All board meetings were recorded, and minutes were posted publicly. And any fines over $100 required a full hearing with the right to appeal to an independent arbitrator. In other words, the system was fixed. As for me, I got back to doing what I did best, running my snowplow business. The publicity from the trial actually helped. I was getting calls from all over the Twin Cities area, people who'd heard my story and wanted to support a business owner who'd stood up to an HOA. I had to hire 2 additional drivers to keep up with demand. By the following winter, I'd expanded my operation to include not just snow removal, but also landscaping and lawn care services in the off-season. Mr. Henderson, now divorced and much happier for it, became a good friend. He told me that Patricia had been controlling and manipulative long before the HOA incident, but he'd always made excuses for her behavior. Watching her try to destroy your business for no good reason was the wake-up call I needed, he said one day over beers. I'm just sorry I didn't see it sooner and stop her before it went so far. Not your fault, I assured him. Some people are just wired to need control over everything and everyone. She was probably looking for a target, and I just happened to be convenient. Mrs. Patterson, in her new role as HOA president, proved to be everything Patricia wasn't: reasonable, fair, and focused on actual community improvement rather than power trips. Under her leadership, Willow Creek started hosting neighborhood barbecues, organizing volunteer cleanup days, and generally becoming a place people wanted to live rather than a place they felt trapped by arbitrary rules. I ran into Patricia once, about a year after her sentencing. She'd served her 6 months and was working at a retail job to pay off her fines and restitution. We passed each other in the grocery store, and for a moment, I thought about saying something. But she just looked away, her face hard, and kept walking. Some people never learn their lesson. As for the snowplow business, it thrived. I bought 2 new trucks and hired a 3rd driver. My route management system became more sophisticated, and I even developed an app where customers could track their place in the queue during storms. And yes, I still service Willow Creek. About half my original clients came back, and I picked up new ones too. But I made one change to my contracts, a clause that explicitly states I maintain full control over my routes and schedules, and that no HOA or other organization can interfere with service delivery. Marcus suggested adding it, and after everything I'd been through, it seemed like common sense. The whole experience taught me some valuable lessons. First, never assume that being right means you'll be treated fairly. The legal system eventually worked, but only after months of harassment and thousands of dollars in legal fees. Second, document everything. Without my meticulous records and security camera footage, proving what Patricia had done would have been nearly impossible. And third, sometimes you have to stand up and fight, even when it's exhausting and expensive, because giving in to bullies just encourages them to target someone else. I also learned that communities are made up of people, and people are complicated. For every Patricia trying to control everyone around her, there were dozens of reasonable folks like Mrs. Patterson and Mr. Henderson who just wanted to live their lives in peace. The trick was making sure the reasonable people stayed engaged and didn't let the power-hungry ones take over. The HOA reform movement that started in Willow Creek spread to other communities in the area. News coverage of my case inspired homeowners in other developments to push back against overreaching boards and demand more accountability. The state legislature even considered a bill that would limit HOA authority and provide clearer protections for homeowners, though it was still working through committee when I last checked. Marcus, who'd become something of a specialist in HOA law through my case, started getting calls from people all over Minnesota and even neighboring states. He told me he'd handled at least 20 cases similar to mine, though most settled before going to trial. "Turns out you opened up a whole new practice area for me," he joked. "I should be paying you referral fees." "You earned every penny I paid you," I told him. "I'd still be fighting off fines and injunctions without you." Looking back now, 2 years after Patricia first approached me in that snowy driveway, I'm amazed at how much changed because I refused to share my customer list. It seems like such a small thing, but it became a line in the sand. On one side was the principle that people have the right to run their businesses and lives without arbitrary interference. On the other was the idea that organizations, even small ones like HOAs, could demand compliance simply because they had some measure of authority. I chose to defend the principle, and while it cost me time, money, and more stress than I care to remember, I'd make the same choice again. My business is stronger now than it ever was. My reputation as someone who stands behind his work and won't be pushed around has attracted exactly the kind of clients I want. People who value reliability and integrity. I charge fair rates, show up when I promise to, and do quality work. That's all I ever wanted to do. The snow is falling again tonight as I write this, big fluffy flakes that are already accumulating on the streets. My phone is buzzing with customer requests, and I'm gearing up for another long night of plowing. The truck is fueled, the blade is sharp, and my route is planned. And this time, nobody's telling me where I can or cannot go. I pull on my heavy coat, grab my thermos of coffee, and head out to the truck. The engine starts with a reassuring rumble, and I begin the familiar process of checking my equipment before heading out. The radio crackles with weather updates. 8 to 10 inches expected by morning with drifting in open areas. It's going to be a profitable night. As I drive through Willow Creek on my way to my first client, I pass the community center where this all started. The lights are on. Another board meeting probably. But now I know Mrs. Patterson is in there, doing her best to make the community better rather than using it as a tool for control. I wave at the security guard, a new guy named Carlos who's always friendly and professional. He waves back and lifts the gate without hesitation. No more blocked streets, no more arguments about access. Just business as usual. My first stop is Mr. Henderson's new townhouse. He downsized after the divorce and seems much happier in his smaller place with its manageable driveway. I clear it in 15 minutes, leaving a neat, clean path from his garage to the street. He comes out with a travel mug of coffee as I'm finishing up. "Thought you might need this," he calls out. "You're a lifesaver," I say, accepting gratefully. "Going to be a long night." "Stay safe out there," he says. "And Derek, thanks again for everything, not just the driveway, but for standing up when it mattered. You changed this whole community." "I just wanted to plow snow," I say with a smile. "Everything else just kind of happened." "Well, I'm glad it did. And I'm glad you didn't back down." I finish my route at about noon the next day, exhausted but satisfied. 23 driveways cleared, all clients happy, and not a single problem with the HOA or anyone else. It's exactly what I'd hoped for when I started this business all those years ago. I park the truck, noting that it'll need an oil change soon, and head inside for some much-needed sleep. My phone buzzes one more time before I turn it off. It's a text from Mrs. Patterson. "Thank you for clearing my driveway so quickly. You're the best. P.S. The board wanted me to tell you that we've officially named you Business Owner of the Month. Your plaque will be ready at next week's meeting." I laugh and shake my head. A year ago, Patricia was trying to find me out of existence. Now the HOA is giving me awards. The irony isn't lost on me. But I'll take it. Recognition is nice, but what matters more is that I can do my job without interference. My clients are happy, and the community is better off for having reasonable people in charge. I fall asleep knowing that tomorrow will bring more work, more snow, and more opportunities to do what I do best. No more HOA drama, no more legal battles, just honest work and fair pay. Sometimes standing your ground is the hardest thing you can do, but it's also the most important. Patricia learned that lesson the hard way from a jail cell. I learned it too, standing in front of a judge defending my right to run my business. The difference is that I came out stronger, while she lost everything she thought mattered. In the end, that's what happens when you try to control people instead of working with them. You push and push until someone pushes back, and then you find out that authority without legitimacy is just bullying with paperwork. I sleep soundly that night, and when the next storm rolls in 3 days later, I'm ready. My truck is maintained, my route is planned, and my client list is private, just as it should be. And if another HOA president ever demands to see it, well, I've got a lawyer on speed dial and a story that makes excellent case law precedent. But somehow, I don't think that'll be necessary. Word travels fast in the HOA world, and after what happened to Patricia, I doubt anyone else is eager to pick that particular fight. The snow continues to fall, as it always does in Minnesota winters. And I continue to plow it, on my terms, for my clients, exactly as I always have. That's the real victory. The freedom to do honest work without someone looking over your shoulder trying to control every move. Patricia never understood that, and it cost her dearly. I understand it perfectly, and it's made all the difference.